This video is the third in a series of rigging videos, and in this instance I want to work with a hand modelled character, so I'm going to make a very quick blocked out character from this cube. So this is box modelling. I would use the modelling toolkit to set that to faces, and I'd use the extrude tool in modelling to extrude faces from this. So if I press the extrude button there, I can bring up a neck. So this is going to be very abstract. So and I'm going to keep extruding, so I can press Control E and I can move that and also expand that as I need to. So I'll bring that forward a bit. So making quite a blocky face, but I've got some options on this afterwards. You could smooth it down and sculpt, but yeah, box modelling is a start for this. So certain areas I may want to have symmetry on. So if I select symmetry X, then I should be able to extrude, again using Control E. In this case I want to have a reasonable amount of geometry around the parts that bend. So for the elbows and that sort of area, I will do that and then bring that down to a kind of hand at the end. So and then that's where the actual palm of the hand will be. So there's a kind of off scale, but for the sake of this demonstration I'm just going to work with this in this way. It may be that you have a project that you do want something exactly like this, but yeah, this is just a rough outline that you can use, and bring in some feet there. Okay, so that's a very basic shape. I'll go back to object mode. I'll save that as the mesh from the modelling, so save scene as box mesh rough. So I'll save that out there. Now if you do want to have this smoothed, we do have the previews of this that we can actually see what it's like when it's smoothed down. There are some areas I would like to change on that, so I can bring the back in slightly. Maybe I want to do more, just slightly round that out. And again I have to remember that I've got this smooth mesh on, so I want the back to be slightly back. Oops, I've done an extra on that. I'm trying to shift click on those ones, so I can bring that back slightly, and if I want to just get those edges back, I can do that as well. Okay, so I'm really not going to do any more work on that. If I go back to object mode, press 3, I can see that smoothed. 2 or 1 goes back to the box model. So if I want to have that fully smoothed, it will add in more geometry for me, which will help on my deformations, and that will go further forward. So to create this as a rigged character, I can go to skeleton, or I can go to the HIK rig section here, and the first thing I want to do is just create skeleton, and as you can see there's nothing there because my mesh is tiny. So this is all developed from a 1x1 cube, so I can just grab that mesh. I won't only grab the mesh. And I've got two choices here. Either I scale up my character to fit the size of the scene. So if I duplicate it, I can do that. And really it's scaling it up so it's kind of the right width, and bring that to about that. So I can also still see, if I turn on X-ray joints, I can still see that that's kind of got the width. It's never going to fit perfectly. So if I go back to the skeleton here, I can scale that down, and it's about half the size probably now. So if I put 0.5 character scale, that will bring that down to the right scale there. And then it's a matter of really just working with the binding as I need to. Bring that skeleton together and just get those in the right place, and I should be able to bind that together, especially if I get it on the ground, and work with that. So you can do that. You've got the two options. One is scaling the character. I need to bring that down slightly, and it's changing the scale from what it is now. So if I have scaled it already, you scale your percentage that you want to do to the character at that moment, and you do have the options of moving that manually. If I move the hips, that's going to bring that up, but from there I can work on the arms, bring those out, or I could decide I want to scale those down because they're too long. But effectively, if I select both parts, I can then say bind skin or interactive bind skin, depending on which one I like best, and then that will add in that for me, and then it's basically the same as the other videos for tweaking that. But you can see that you do have that area in there, and if you've lined the bones up slightly better, you will get more movement with that. So there were some options when I was making the skeleton. If I want to create a new skeleton, just put that onto none. I can create a skeleton. You've got the amount of spine, neck, you've got the finger bones if you want them or not. If you're not working with them, just turn them off, it's a lot easier. Toe bones, if I want to have toe, foot thumb if you want one, and you can add in toes onto your and extra bones in there. It does make it more complicated. There's going to be a lot more skin binding possible with that, but yes, you do have quite a lot of options in there. And if you're working with motion capture data, sometimes you'll add in this roll bones, which give you an idea of where the item has rotated to it, or what rotations on the arm. It's not normally necessary as we're working in the system. That's a really quick overview of working with a character like that. Now there will be another question. If you have done box modeling, how do you get the UVs sorted out on your character mesh with this as well? So I'll run through that as well. So one of the things that happens when you're doing box modeling is that the UVs stick with how they were set up in the original box. So here I have the box. I have smoothed it, but I think there's a lot of areas that are overlapping. It's all generated from a box. I smoothed it so that there is more geometry than I think. But what we want to be able to do is to unfold this. Now there's a few different ways we can unwrap. There's an automatic unwrapping that takes each of the areas that you're using and automatically puts seams in. So you can see in here the white, thick white lines are where it's cutting sections out of this. So for example, across the top there around the neck, we have this one, and then we can color that as we need to. So we can export this out to Photoshop. If we create a PSD network, you can create a Photoshop file of this and color that in. So if I undo that, I want to go back because I didn't want to have the seams in that way. And there's a few different ways of doing that, but really I want to unfold this. So if I get some of the edges, I can put these seams in myself, so it's actually working with some of the seams it had as a box, but there should be some edge loops. So if I select that, double click that one, I've got an edge loop there. I can actually define that as a seam, so I can say cut and sew and cut, and that will give me that white line down that area. So anything that is a rounded box and you want to cut in half or have a seam down, you can cut in this way, and that will allow you to then use this unfold tool, which actually uses that. And I've got a bit of overlapping in areas where I haven't fully done that, but it's unfolding it in a slightly more advantageous way. So if I just select all around the head, I'm just trying to find, if I hold down shift and double click, there isn't an edge loop here necessarily, but it's, if I select all of those, then I make a slight difference on the head there. So we've got that cut out. Each of those areas should show up in here. If I select the faces, I'll be able to see where those are. And it's a matter of cutting these out to be the right kind of shape that you want. So we've got probably just get an edge loop around the top of the legs as well and cut that, and the feet, I will need to have some cuts on that. So this way I'm not double clicking it, I'm just shift clicking that. I also still have the symmetry on object X, so it is doing it symmetrically in both parts. So this should give me more area, and as you can see how that's separating those out. If I roll over these, I can see the head bit is still actually not quite functioning in the way I want that to. So if I select that, if I want to get rid of these seams, I could sew, and that brings those back together, and that can be useful for reassessing how I'm working with this. So if I don't want to have a line down the front of the head, I can do that on the side. It may just show up better, and I can add that cut in there. So now if I just press optimize, unfold, you get a slightly different shape with that as you're going along. So this area along the top, I can see where I can make further refinements to this. So there should be areas around the arms as well, because where it's actually fully connected, it will link them together, and just check where I've got those. Yeah, that should be a fairly reasonable way of bringing these apart. So I can just select the faces again. We've got a lot of faces bunched up in there, and the neck is cut out, so that should be able to unfold quite well. I'll put it back into object mode, try unfold again, and you can see there it's kind of got better cuts on these, so I can see how that's working in different places. There is some overlap in these areas, and I'd want to pull those apart and move those, but they are all able to flatten. If it's a single shape, you do need to have these areas that you can work with. So if I go into the line tool, I can see it highlights on the screen where these are. And I can also, if I want to, I can select the areas and I should be able to move these around. So this is why it's best to do this when you don't have a lot of geometry on them. So that should select all of those faces in that area, and I can see how that's overlapping another piece. If I use the move tool, I can actually separate that out here. And because this is a facial area, I actually want this to be bigger, so I can scale that up. And then I'm able to have a lot more detail in the UVs on this one. And now they're separate, I can actually marquee around them when I want to move them. So the back of the head, I can do a similar thing here. If I do that a bit better, I can get all of them. So I can separate these out and lay them out on this UV map here, which goes from 0 to 1. If I want to have that the right way up, I can should be able to flip that, or probably rotate it's better. And then I can see which areas are here. See, that's part of the arms. So double click here, gets all of it. But if I want to separate out these arms, I should be able to work out which one's which, and select those areas within it. So with this, it's a little bit hard when they're overlapping. So I'll just check I've got, so I haven't got camera based selection on, so I'm actually selecting the ones behind when I do a marquee. So I am going to just click all of these. It's taking all of them at once. So what I'm going to do is just line that up nice and straight there, and that allows me to catch most of these in one marquee. So I've got that there. Just check to see which ones I have and haven't got. So I think I've got all of those now, and I should be able to just separate these out as I did in the previous one. So that has actually brought that into a different position, and I can do the same on the other side of the arm as well. So very simply just go in and marquee around that, check that I've got them all, and I haven't, so I can shift select the ones I haven't got, and again use the move tool to separate those out from the other parts. If I scale both of these together, they will scale up. Again, I don't want to overlap, but I do want to make these so that I can work with them in a simpler way. So if I then just take that single one, if I deselect, well, it's selecting them together, which is I hadn't expected, because that one I can, no, selecting those with symmetry. So if I turn the symmetry off, I'm likely to be able to move those independently. And because these are longer shapes, I can make these so that they will optimize the space in this window. Again, I'll make sure they won't overlap, and just make those decent size so I'll get a decent resolution with these, and place them in an area where it's free. So I'd have to do that unwrapping with all of these areas. So once you've finished your box modeling, it's a matter of creating the seams, moving them, and getting a good UV layout. I would possibly also need to bring the whole thing up. If I'm able to select all of that there, if I double click, that's an easier way of doing it. I can clear that area and move those. So those may be feet or legs, I don't know. But you can find gaps for these as you need to, and make space for all the elements you have. If you've got a symmetrical pattern, you can have both the arms overlaying each other, and we can make sure that there's an optimal amount of room for each of these elements in the UV layout. So this is an important part of the modeling process. Really, the texturing will bring your character to life, so it's important to get these right, and it will allow you to work with other paint packages, or to paint these in or add textures in Photoshop. So that's almost done. That's just outside of the window there. So now I've done that, that's got my map that I can then paint. I will save my scene again. UV layout. And like I say, you can either paint directly onto this, assign a texture directly to this. If you want to create a Photoshop image to go in the background of that, we can create the PSD network. Create a PSD network. You can create a PSD network. Normally it gives you a dialog box with that. No, error file. Let me just get that back. Error file. No object has been selected. Okay, so I need to select this object in object mode. So I'll just go back to the modeling toolkit, select it in object mode. It's still called cube. So when I do tell it to create the PSD network, it's going to call it cube shape. Size of your object, which aspects you want to use with that. It may be a bump, it may be just color. But then we can create that, and that will save that into our Maya project in a way that we can open in Photoshop. So if I look at that here, I should be able to look in the folder that I'm working to. It hasn't got a folder for that, so I'm not sure where it saved that. So to make that actually work, I'm going to make sure I've got a source images folder in my project files, and so now when I've selected that object, I should be able to create a PSD network. Just reset the settings there, source images, add in some elements I want that to work with, and press create. So that has actually brought in a different look of an item, and in my source images folder I do have the PSD document that I will open in Photoshop. I'll just drag that in, and I should be able to see the layout in there, so I can add in my features where I want to, colour that as I want. So we've got the Lambert colour here, so at the moment that's black. I should be able to paint or draw or whatever I want to do, or add images to that in the right area. So if I just bring in a white line where I think the face may go, I think that's probably a bit low, but we'll just be able to see how that's drawn onto the colour. So I'll press save, and if I go back across, I should be able to turn my textures on and see how that has shown up. So like I said, the mouth was a little bit too low, but that's how that works.